In the past few billion years, Earth has been pummeled by asteroids, crashed into other planets, and frozen over several times. Not to mention being ruled by all kinds of crazy life forms. Sometimes it's a wonder that our blue homeworld has survived it all. But if we want to take a whirlwind tour of our planet's history, we'll have to start way back at the very beginning. Okay, quick brain fact. Did you know that curiosity is one of the only emotions that actually rewires your brain in real time? The moment you lean in to understand something, like you are right now, your neurons start building new pathways. When you watch curiosity-fueled content like this, your brain treats it like active learning, decoding and making sense of new ideas just like it does when you solve a puzzle. So, watching our shows is literally good for your brain. Well, that's why we launched the Popular Science Fast channel, where you can stream all our shows 24/7. Tune in any time of day and you'll find mind-bending science from us and from some of the world's leading creators, including NASA's spaceflight, Hacksmith, and Complexly, plus live rocket launches, documentaries, and deep dive specials. It's basically a non-stop feed of curiosity, always on, always learning. We're currently available on 10 different platforms, including Vizio, Roku, and Plex, but we're just getting started. We're reaching tens of millions of homes and streaming devices all over the globe, and that audience keeps growing every month. And the channel just keeps evolving. We're adding brand new series and specials monthly, from breakthroughs in tech to space exploration coverage you can watch live. It's a front row seat to the new space race, alongside a 150-year-old legacy of science storytelling, now being brought to streaming for the first time. So, if you ever finish one of these streams and still want more, well, you don't have to wait. You can jump straight into Popular Science and keep that curiosity going. It's there 24/7, ready whenever your brain wants its next aha moment. Some 4.5 billion years ago, our solar system began to emerge out of a dense cloud of interstellar gas and dust. This cloud collapsed into a swirling disk of matter that got hotter and hotter and hotter until hydrogen fused into helium. And just like that, our sun was born. And baby Earth was on its way too. After the birth of our star, all the matter on the farthest ends of the spinning disk began to clump together. These clumps would be the seedlings for the planets and moons in our solar system. As they accumulated more matter, they grew bigger and more spherical. The clumps in the cooler regions of the solar system were mostly made of ice, liquids, and gases. Closer to the sun, all the rocky material formed the inner planets like Mars and Earth. This young Earth was incredibly active, volcanically speaking. It spewed out gases like hydrogen sulfide, methane, and carbon dioxide. These gases made up the very first atmosphere on our planet. Early Earth was constantly bombarded by large asteroids and comets, and soon Earth experienced an even more violent collision. Theia, a planet the size of Mars, slammed right into our young world. This epic collision threw chunks of matter all around Earth's orbit, and then gravity bound them together into what we know now as the Moon. On this hot, early Earth, there were no oceans. All water existed as gas. But 3.8 billion years ago, our planet cooled enough for water to condensate and become liquid. The very first primitive ocean covered this young Earth and turned it into a water world. H2O is an essential ingredient for creating living things, so with all that water, life appeared on Earth about 3.7 billion years ago. These earliest forms of life were microscopic organisms, but it was nearly a billion years after that some of these organisms changed the course of the world. Earth didn't stay as a water world very long. Soon, the very first continents emerged from the ancient ocean. Scientists call them cratons. As more and more land rose from the ocean, the very first supercontinent appeared on the planet. Valbara wasn't exactly a supercontinent. It was pretty small. Scientists think it was smaller than the continent of Australia. Around 2.4 billion years ago, cyanobacteria evolved to become our planet's first photosynthesizers. Finally, we had some oxygen producers to make Earth's atmosphere much more hospitable. And the rest is history, folks. Just kidding, we've still got a long way to go. With all this new oxygen, Earth's atmosphere had much lower levels of carbon dioxide. And that made the planet icy cold. Much of our young world froze over as Earth saw its first ice age. Now, as Earth's atmosphere was changing, the continents were moving too. They broke up and reassembled into the next supercontinent, Rodinia. Rodinia was a real supercontinent. It may have been the largest supercontinent to ever cover the planet. And life? Well, life finally became more complex. But then something happened. Rodinia broke apart and a new supercontinent assembled. This one was called Pannotia. Then, between about 540 and 485 million years ago, there was an explosion of new life. This time was called the Cambrian explosion, and the animals that evolved during this period had hard body parts, like shells or spines. The most famous of all were the alien-looking trilobites. Around 440 million years ago, the climate suddenly shifted and the temperature of the ocean changed dramatically. Earth saw its first mass extinction event. This was the Ordovician Silurian extinction, and a majority of the life that had been spreading around the planet vanished. Many of these life forms laid the foundation for the ecosystems that we have on Earth today. Somewhere between 420 to 350 million years ago, the first trees arose from Earth's soil. And the first animals made their way to land, too. 250 million years ago, the planet was covered by our last vast supercontinent, Pangaea. Sadly, it was also during this period that Earth witnessed the greatest mass extinction event in our history, the Great Dying. Huge amounts of greenhouse gases and accelerated global warming wiped out about 90% of all species on Earth. But this mass extinction helped pave the way for the next wave of animals to evolve. 240 to 230 million years ago, the first dinosaurs appeared. For the next 150 million years, they'd rule the land. If you were there, you'd have witnessed the gigantic sauropod Argentinosaurus, the largest land animal ever. Or you might have been chased by one of the Earth's greatest apex predators, the T-Rex. And you'd also witnessed Pangaea breaking up and forming the continents we know today. Okay, you may already know where this is headed. 66 million years ago, an asteroid slammed into our planet, right where Mexico sits now. And it coughed up so much debris into the atmosphere that it blocked out the sun. This led to devastating climate changes that caused the dinosaurs to die out. In the next wave of emerging animals, mammals became more common. Around 6 million years ago, the earliest known humans started walking this world. This species was called Sahelanthropus, though they still likely walked on all fours. 4 million years ago, early humans began to walk upright, and about 1 million years later, they developed the first known tools, which they used to break things. Some 800,000 years ago, things sparked. These early humans discovered how to control fire and could now cook food and provide themselves with heat. Their brains continued to evolve, now more rapidly than ever. These humans learned to interact with each other and the surrounding world in whole new ways. Then, between 40,000 to 15,000 years ago, all other human species besides Homo sapiens went extinct. 10,000 years ago, Earth saw its earliest farmers. These previously nomadic humans stopped wandering the planet and finally put down their roots. Jumping way forward to about 250 years ago, the Industrial Revolution took place. We went through major technological, socioeconomic, and cultural transformations. Rural-based farm societies became more industrialized urban ones. Our human population continued to grow. By 1804, we reached 1 billion. By 1927, we'd hit 2 billion. And since the 1960s, the global population has risen faster and faster to where it is now, at over 8 billion people. Millions of years ago, Earth looked very different. All the continents were fused into one, teeming with life, both beautiful and terrifying. When you think of prehistoric times, you might picture a T-Rex rampaging through the jungle with its razor-sharp teeth. But even before the dinosaurs, there were other giant creatures ruling the Earth. Yeah, welcome to the Permian period. This epoch started 300 million years ago. Back then, our planet had one supercontinent, Pangaea, surrounded by a world ocean called Panthalassa. The Permian period began at the end of an ice age when temperatures were much cooler than today. Then, during early Permian days, Earth warmed to a lush environment with a diversity of plants and a rapid evolution of insect and animal life. Only, as you probably know, everything is ever-changing on our blue marble. Over the next 50 million years, Earth kept growing hotter and drier. Eventually, the most deadly event in the history of our planet wiped out nearly everything that ever lived here. Scientists call this event the Great Dying, and it was the most catastrophic mass extinction event the Earth has ever seen. And the Earth has seen 5 of them. But before we get to all this doom and gloom, let me take you on an epic journey back in time. Here in the Permian period, some of the most incredible species that roamed our young planet are about to emerge. If you could time travel nearly 300 million years into the past, you'd land smack dab in the middle of the supercontinent Pangaea. Earth's smaller continents would have just finished colliding with each other to form this enormous landmass, taking up 1/3 of the planet's surface. There was likely less oxygen in the air than there is now, but you still might be able to breathe. Oh, and bring a jacket because it would likely be chilly, with some areas averaging no more than a brisk 4 degrees Celsius. But don't worry, things will soon start heating up. By the end of the early Permian, the Ice Age was on its way out and Pangaea was becoming a lush world. Plants and animals started to thrive. This was a volcanic world. Violent eruptions changed the climate, shaped the landscape, and paved the way for evolution. When giant swamp forests began drying out, plant life had to adapt, and so 290 million years ago, Earth saw the very first seed-bearing plants called gymnosperms. These plants carried seeds on their cones, and they spread across the supercontinent like wildfire. The ancient evergreen forest of the early Permian was hiding something familiar. Just like today, you could find cicadas and beetles piercing and sucking on the plants, and the cutest of them all? Cockroaches. Only, these weren't the cockroaches you know today. These prehistoric vermin were gigantic, the size of birds. But despite their size, cockroaches never ruled prehistoric land, and that's good news, am I right? No, something much more fascinating was roaming Pangaea. The now extinct ancestor of primitive mammals, Dimetrodon. This animal was as fascinating as it was terrifying. Encountering a Dimetrodon would be quite a sight to behold. This ancient lizard grew to 5 meters long and weighed 225 kilograms. It had a large sail running down its spine. Scientists think this sail helped the reptile regulate its body temperature, soaking up warmth during the daytime and dissipating excess heat during the cooler nights. It would walk toward you like a crocodile and act like a total menace. Dimetrodon was an apex predator of its time. Watch out for a mix of sharp and flat teeth that would slice you open and grind you up. In the Middle Permian period, other mammal-like reptiles took over the planet. Therapsids. They had strong jaws with sharp teeth and a somewhat upright stance thanks to their legs being situated underneath their bodies. Therapsid reptiles varied from the 5-meter-long, likely omnivorous Deuterosaurus to the 5 times smaller, meat-eating Lycanops. You could meet plenty more therapsids if you stuck around for another 20 million years. During the Middle Permian period, Earth kept getting hotter. The average global temperature on Pangaea grew to about 25 degrees Celsius, and volcanoes were spitting greenhouse gases out into the atmosphere. Due to the changing climate, sea levels were shifting, but marine life found ways to thrive. If you were to take a dip in the prehistoric superocean, you'd be swimming alongside ancient sharks and bony primitive fish. Many more complex marine species came and went as the environment kept changing. In the late Permian period, you could have a friendly encounter with another reptile, Lystrosaurus. These looked like a cross between a lizard and a pig, but unlike all the scary prehistoric monsters out there, Lystrosaurus was a herbivore. It was just 1 meter long and had powerful front legs for burrowing. Soon, another cute mammal-like lizard evolved, the cynodont. The cynodont looked like a giant rodent. It was about 1 meter long, had whiskers, and fed on small animals and insects. Now, during this time, something bad was brewing in the air. A large amount of volcanic activity was displacing oxygen from the atmosphere. Scientists think there was as little as 10% oxygen in the air. Compare that to 21% today. You'd have a hard time breathing in that environment. And the temperature kept rising and rising. With an average temperature of about 28 degrees Celsius, this lush prehistoric world was turning into an oven. All good things must come to an end, and sadly, this period came to a particularly brutal one. About 252 million years ago, about 90% of all plant and animal life was wiped out. This tragic moment is called the Great Dying, and it was Earth's most devastating mass extinction event. Scientists still debate what caused this catastrophic extinction. Most theories suggest it was the result of explosive volcanic activity. As huge volcanic eruptions swept the continent, massive amounts of ash were unleashed into the atmosphere. So much ash that it blocked out most, if not all, of the incoming sunlight. And with no sunlight, global temperatures dropped suddenly. Plants couldn't perform their photosynthetic processes and died off. And without plants, the very basis of their food chain, animals soon followed. Things got worse before they got better. Because of all the carbon dioxide emitted during the volcanic eruptions, global temperatures rose again. And not just to where they were, but higher, much higher. And this caused the superocean to lose most of its oxygen. And unable to breathe, a majority of the Permian sea animals perished. Eventually, over 95% of marine species and more than 70% of land animals became extinct. Over 300 million years ago, before the age of giant dinosaurs, Earth was covered with giant insects. Imagine a world where dragonflies are the size of crows and millipedes are as long as cars. Welcome to the Carboniferous period. Why were insects so enormous during this time? What did oxygen have to do with it? And why did these insects go extinct? This is What If, and here's what the Earth looked like in the age of giant insects. The Carboniferous period was one of the most transformational periods in the history of Earth. The planet's land masses were beginning to form the supercontinent of Pangaea. Extensive swamps and warm, humid forests dominated the landscape. And giant insects weren't the only huge creatures roaming the planet. There was also a vast array of marine life, like early forms of sharks and a giant amphibian that would reach up to 6 feet long. Now, enough talking. Let's travel back in time, 300 million years ago, and dive into the Carboniferous age. Now, the first thing you'd probably notice would be the giant insect-like creatures. One of the most iconic was the Meganeura. This insect resembled a modern-day dragonfly, except with a major twist. It had a wingspan of up to 75 centimeters. Yeah, scarier than that though, it was carnivorous, hunting down other insects and small amphibians. Hopefully it doesn't come for you. So that thing is in the sky, but on land, you'll have the Arthropleura. This millipede-like creature could grow up to 2.5 meters long. Luckily, it wouldn't go after you. It preferred munching on decomposing vegetation. Another creepy-looking insect was the Pulmonoscorpius. This was a giant scorpion that mostly roamed the swampier areas of Earth. They could grow 70 centimeters long. There were also giant cockroaches that grew to 10 centimeters, and mayflies with 45-centimeter wingspans. So it's safe to say that you'd have a lot to watch out for when you're wandering around in this period, but the question is, how did these insects get so big anyway? Well, you may have noticed as you've been hanging around in the Carboniferous age, you feel a lot more energetic and alert. Maybe you've had an easier time running around. This has to do with the oxygen levels in your current world. Research has estimated that the atmospheric oxygen levels were as high as 35% during this period. Compare that to the 21% we breathe today. Oxygen was one of the key factors in the gigantism found in insects at the time. But why would this make them so giant? Insects breathe differently from other creatures. Insects don't have a circulatory system to transport oxygen. Instead, it gets delivered directly to their tissues through a network of tiny tubes called the trachea. And the more oxygen in the atmosphere, the bigger these insects are. But there might be more reasons why the insects grew to this size. Another theory suggests that the insects were forced to grow so large due to oxygen toxicity. Yeah, as amazing as oxygen is, you can have too much of a good thing. Too much oxygen in your body can create what's known as free radicals. These are unstable molecules that can damage your cells and even damage your DNA. In the case of our insects, they were forced to grow this big. Otherwise, they'd suffer oxygen toxicity. Growing larger would slow down the rate of oxygen absorption, making it harder to suffer from too much oxygen. And the same could happen to you. The longer you hang out in this period, the higher oxygen levels will cause you to experience nausea, respiratory issues, and even some effects on your nervous system. Now, insects were arguably the stars of this age, but they weren't the only things to experience massive change during the Carboniferous period. This time was known as the Coal Age. That's because of the extensive coal beds that formed after ancient forests decayed. These coal beds are one of our main sources of energy. We're still using them today. And a lot of the fruits and veggies you find in the grocery store may be descendants of plants from over 300 million years ago. The Carboniferous period saw the evolution of the first seed-bearing plants, creating more diverse ecosystems than we'd ever seen before. Wait, what's that over there? Kinda looks like a dinosaur. Oh, hey little guy. Turns out this wasn't a dino, just one of the first reptiles to ever appear. But if you stick around a couple of million more years, we'll enter the Mesozoic era, which was known as the Age of Dinosaurs. Speaking of change, the atmosphere was another part of Earth that evolved during this period. Earth had a lush, greenhouse-like climate when you first arrived, warm and humid temperatures to support the swampy forests we've been mucking about. But as the period progressed over millions of years, the climate transitioned to what's known as an icehouse Earth state. The temperature would get significantly lower and ice sheets would begin to form, mainly in the southern hemisphere. But why did this happen? Well, as we've been exploring this crazy period, Earth's land masses have been slowly coming together to form a supercontinent known as Pangaea. And when land masses this big start to move, it can seriously affect ocean currents, wind patterns, and global climate. Now, the rainforests have collapsed, which has led to a decline in the fauna and vegetation that were previously booming. And with the rainforests in decline, well, that means oxygen levels are being reduced. Before you know it, our massive insects start dying and going extinct. Without the higher levels of oxygen available to support their size, well, these giant insects can't survive. The lower oxygen levels and a drier climate have created a habitat better suited for smaller insects. Also happening at this point, early reptiles are starting to take over, making the landscape way more difficult for the insects. 20 million years ago, the Megalodon was king of the oceans. The largest shark that ever lived, it ate other megasharks for breakfast. But as an ice age engulfed the world, this enormous sea giant's time came to an end. What if, through a miraculous twist of fate, the Megalodon had managed to survive? Just how large and scary would the Megalodon be today? And what would happen to humans who went into the ocean? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the Megalodon never stopped evolving. A megalodon living in the 21st century, one that never stopped evolving, would be a truly frightening and majestic creature. Today's Meg would likely have expanded to the size of a blue whale, about 30 meters long and a hefty 200 tons in weight. That's as heavy as 33 elephants, with a beating heart as big as a car. Today's megalodon would need to eat 3,600 kilograms of food a day and would be the largest animal that's ever existed. It would also be equipped with some new survival traits, ones that have helped it last these 3 million years.
What do you think those traits would be? Well, before we get into the making of Meg 2.0, let's look at what the Megalodon was like in its heyday. Let's go back 23 million years ago during the Miocene and Pliocene epochs. The Megalodon was roaming about, conquering the oceans. It spanned about 18 meters long. That's 3 times longer than the biggest great white shark we've ever encountered. Since it was so massive, well, obviously it weighed a lot, as much as a space shuttle, about 30 to 65 metric tons. It was equipped with enormous teeth, the size of a human hand. In fact, the word megalodon, when translated from its origin in ancient Greek, means big tooth. Serrated on one side, these teeth were perfect for sinking into large, meaty fish and tearing them apart. Throughout its life, the Meg, like other sharks, would shed and grow new teeth, possibly growing up to 40,000 teeth over its lifetime. These teeth chewed through a lot of food, about 1,100 kilograms, that's 2,500 pounds every single day. That's the equivalent of 2 cows. 10,000 quarter pounders every single day. But those were off the menu in this era. What was around were the baleen whales. These were a key part of the Meg's diet, and the Meg was also a cannibal if it got a chance. It would happily feast on another Meg if it could. This giant shark was also a ruthless killer. It had a pretty straightforward but effective strategy to finish off its victims. It would slide into the water beneath its prey so it couldn't be seen. Then it would shoot up vertically to slam into the animal at high speed. Imagine being pummeled with 65 tons of pure Meg. The prey, usually large whales, didn't stand a chance against this high-pressure assault. While they were recovering from this full-body blow, the Meg would sink its teeth into the whale, usually in the ribcage area. After that kind of injury, the fight was over. Then the Meg could settle into a nice meal. As a victim of the Meg, you could also get swallowed up whole. Yeah, with a skull 4.5 meters long, it could comfortably take in something as large as a whole family car. So watch out for this terrifying creature when it comes into the modern day. And of course, the Meg had mega babies. Baby Megs were 3 to 4 meters long, so good luck coming out alive if you run into one of those. The Megalodon really came into its own during the Miocene epoch, from 23 to 5 million years ago. At the start of the period, the Earth was warm, but then later it began to cool. During this time, the Meg preferred hanging out in warm, tropical waters. In fact, it roamed multiple places across the globe. Meg teeth, as old as 3 million years, have been found in waters everywhere, except Antarctica. As long as there was enough food to feast on in the water, the Meg was happy. So, with a creature this deadly and powerful conquering the seas, how did it manage to go extinct? Well, maybe it was climate change. During the Miocene period, a cooling trend had begun. This carried all the way into the Pliocene and gave way to a big freeze. During the era after that, 2.6 million years ago, an ice age began. According to one theory, these freezing temperatures from the ice age may not have been suitable for the Meg. They could have led to its extinction. But other scientists disagree. Studying the Meg found that temperature fluctuations seen in earlier periods didn't impact the shark. It managed to survive. The Meg was able to survive changes in temperature because it was partially warm-blooded. It had an adaptation so it could warm its blood using heat from its muscles as it moved. This allowed it to maintain a body temperature 7 degrees Celsius higher than the surrounding water. So while it preferred warmer weather, it could survive in cooler temperatures as well. So what was different about the Pleistocene Ice Age? Well, for one, this ice age was a lot colder than before. The Meg and other creatures that had evolved in the last tens of millions of years had never experienced such a deep freeze. The Pleistocene Ice Age, 2.6 million years ago, was the most severe temperature drop that Earth had faced in the last 500 million years. As the ice crept over the Earth, there was a severe decrease in habitat for both land and sea creatures. Sea levels dropped 200 meters and coastal land areas dried up. As water turned to ice and sea levels dropped, the baleen whale, the Meg's main prey, was fighting to survive. And it wasn't just the cold. Changes in ocean currents reduced the flow of nutrients in parts of the ocean, areas that were prime feeding grounds for the baleen whale. This affected its population. And there was another problem. Baleen whales give birth in warmer waters, but then migrate to colder waters to feed. With the rapid reduction in warmer waters, their breeding grounds would have also been disrupted, another pressure leading to extinction. With baleen whales going extinct, the Meg had to focus on smaller prey like dolphins and seals. But this would have been a problem because the Meg was facing competition for prey from a smaller and more agile competitor, the great white shark. 1/3 the size of the Meg, the great white shark was nimbler, needed less to eat, and was competing for the Meg's food. Both baleen whales and the quicker dolphins and seals. And in the battle for fast-moving smaller prey, great whites were the winners. The Meg's breeding grounds would also have been disrupted. Its babies lived in nurseries and shallow waters. As sea levels oscillate up and down, these shallow waters would have risen and then receded unpredictably. They would no longer have provided a safe spot for baby Megs to survive. And at the same time, the Meg's massive feeding requirements for energy and to maintain its high internal body temperature were not getting any smaller. So that's what led to the Meg's extinction. Too big to maintain, too much competition, and too little to eat. It feels a little wild that this apex predator essentially starved to death. But could we rewrite history? Could the Megalodon somehow survive into the modern day? Well, let's take a look at a scenario where the Meg was able to evolve to get bigger and more powerful than ever before. In order for the Megalodon to survive, maybe we should see what would happen if we avoided the Ice Age altogether. Ice ages are triggered by several things. One key factor is how far away the Earth is from the Sun, because this impacts the amount of heat Earth receives. Then there are shifts in plate tectonics affecting the movement of land masses and the flow of ocean currents on Earth. So what if this Ice Age never happened? Well, massive volcanic eruptions could have warmed Earth. This happens if they throw large amounts of greenhouse gases like water vapor and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So how about the kind of volcanic action that led to a massive heat spike 56 million years ago? At that time, Earth suddenly got super hot. Massive amounts of carbon dioxide entered the atmosphere, raising the temperature by up to 8 degrees Celsius. The seas also became incredibly warm. In the tropics, it was like a warm bathtub with temperatures around 38 degrees Celsius. Maybe this could have offset the coming ice age, but on the other hand, this heat spike also caused a bunch of creatures to go extinct. So it's not clear if this would have been a sure way to save the Megalodon. So we're going to have to look for another miracle to save the Meg. Could the Meg have survived the Ice Age some other way? After all, many other species did. Great white sharks made it through, so did gray whales. So, are there traits that the Meg could have borrowed to make it through this time? The Meg found it difficult to compete with great white sharks for food because the Meg was 3 times larger. The Meg's metabolic requirements would have been significantly higher to maintain that body weight. At the same time, it would have made them less nimble than the great white shark. One solution? The Meg needed to adapt with the times, shrink a little. Maybe the Meg could have borrowed a trait from the skate. This is another fish made of cartilage, just like the Megalodon. Winter skate, living in Canada, have shrunk their body size 45% in response to water temperatures going up 10%. And this didn't take them millions of years. They did this over a period of 7,000 years. This was a response to environmental changes, not a result of gradual natural selection. And the knowledge to do this can be preserved in sharks' genomes. Some sharks have very large genomes containing traits that they can draw on when they need, kind of like a fire extinguisher stored away in a glass box to break open during an emergency. So let's give the Meg this kind of fancy genome. Okay, so now as the ice sets in, our Meg has shrunk. It's 55% as large as it used to be. Don't worry, this change isn't going to last forever. It's just an adaptation the Megalodon will make to get through the Ice Age. Now that it's smaller, its energy needs are lower, and it's better able to compete with those vicious great white sharks. I told you earlier that adult Megs were solitary creatures. Well, that was fine when they were super large. They could bash other large creatures with their superior weight, but now that we've shrunk the Meg down a bit, it's going to need some other strategies. To further help our Megs survive, we're going to take a lesson from killer whales. They're going to form a pod. Maybe the Megs would mimic a behavioral feature of transient orcas. These form smaller pods of up to 5 individuals, which are mainly geared towards hunting. This would be in line with the solitary nature of the adult Megalodon, while at the same time incorporating a behavioral feature that helps the Meg to survive. And while it's doing that, it's going to diversify its diet. It's no longer just baleen whales. Meg, you're going to eat squid, fish, and any other marine animal you come across. This broad diversification of diet helped the orcas survive the last ice age, and it'll help the Meg get through it too. Sharks actually have a super efficient digestive system that makes use of almost everything they eat. Because of this feature, shark poop mostly looks like goo. That's all that's left at the end of digestion after they squeeze all the nutrients out. And now the Meg's goo is going to have even more variety. Good. Next, we'll make the Meg omnivorous. This is a trait we'll take from the bonnethead shark. So occasionally the Meg will eat some seagrass when it needs to survive. Okay, so now we have a smaller Meg, one that hunts in packs and eats a more diverse diet. This Meg is better suited to ward off the threat from great white sharks. And as baleen whales die out, this Meg has other stuff to eat. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about our Meg's chances. But there's one more modification we need to make. We'd like to give the Megalodon an additional feature to help it in colder waters. The Meg already was partially warm-blooded, but it definitely preferred warm subtropical waters. A cold water adaptation would definitely help it survive the future ice ages. So we'll borrow another feature from the whale. We'll give it a thick layer of blubber. This will serve as insulation when waters become super chilly. Okay, are we done? No. Maybe just one more thing. During the Pleistocene Ice Age, the Meg's babies suffered when water receded from the nurseries on the shore. So maybe a change to where the Meg gives birth to its babies would be a good adaptation. For this, we want to borrow a secret from the white shark. Where the white shark gives birth is a mystery to scientists. There are theories that white sharks give birth far out in the water. This trait would have made their babies less vulnerable to the shifting shoreline as the ice ages came and went. If the Meg could adopt this trait, well, it would ensure the survival of the next generation. Okay, so I think our refurbished Meg, I'm going to call it Meg 2.0, is now equipped to take on pretty much anything Mother Nature throws at it. Time for you to jump into the time machine and see how the new Meg fares with this ice age. Then we'll come back to the modern day. 2.6 million years ago. Over the course of the next 7,000 years, you'll see the Megalodon, with its new, larger genome, draw on specific traits to shrink its size. It's now about 50% of what it used to be. Still larger than the great white sharks, but with lower feeding and energy requirements than before. The baleen whales have gone extinct, but the meg is happy to sink its teeth into any creature. Squids, seals, they're all fair game. The white sharks find their old enemy is smaller and more nimble, and they're surprised that the meg is now hunting in a pod of 4 or 5. White sharks can't get close as a group of megs are circling their prey. Just like before, a blow is dealt from beneath, and then, before you know it, the rest of the megs have pounced on the desperate victim, tearing it to shreds. The white sharks are the losers in the fight with Megalodon 2.0. They pick their spots, but stay clear of direct competition in order to survive. As the Pleistocene era continues, the Earth goes through multiple glaciation cycles. In addition to its partial warm-bloodedness, the additional layer of blubber that Meg 2.0 has enabled it to survive as Earth's waters turned cold. At the height of the Ice Age, the Meg migrates to the warmest waters it can find, around the tropics and subtropics. This was a strategy used by orcas, many of which survived in the warmer waters around Africa during the Ice Age. As Megs from different parts of the globe migrate to these regions to weather the cold, the gene pool becomes more diverse. 13,000 years ago. Okay, while megafauna are going extinct on land because of both shifts in climate and human predators, you can see Meg 2.0, King of the Oceans, is able to survive these shifts. Adapted to both warm and cold waters, and with its new layer of blubber, it seeks refuge in deep, cold waters to survive human hunting expeditions. It gives birth to babies deep in the sea, far from human eyes. 11,700 years ago. Okay, the last ice age ends. The Megalodon undergoes a new shift. Its DNA recognizes a change in the environment, signaling that it can grow larger again. In a few thousand years, it doubles its size, and it's back to where it was 2.6 million years ago. There's a lot of food in the oceans. Its hunting strategy is flawless, and its secretive breeding approach ensures the survival of new baby Megs. New generations of the Meg grow bigger and stronger. The Meg reaches a staggering 200 tons. It's 30 meters long, and its teeth are longer and sharper than ever before. Everything in the ocean and on land fears this creature. This is Meg 2.0, the unchallenged king of the oceans. Whales won't be able to grow to the massive size they do today. The Meg's voracious appetite keeps them in check. Modern era. In the 19th and 20th century, humans hunt whales, but they learn to stay clear of the Megalodon. If hunting boats go after them, a pack of Meg 2.0s swarm around the boats and destroy them, attacking in a coordinated effort. The lessons from fighting great white sharks 2.6 million years ago come in handy for this predator. Today, for humans, swimming in the ocean comes with a warning. You may be attacked by a stray Megalodon 2.0. Only swim in areas where lifeguards are around, but I'm not sure they'll be much help. The Meg 2.0 is somewhat misunderstood. It's not that this massive shark targets humans as a food source. After all, the Meg needs 3,600 kilograms of food a day. That means it would have to eat 45 to 60 humans in order to make a meal of us. That's like eating a ton of candy instead of a proper meal. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't still want to eat you if given the chance. And if the water's choppy and humans are splashing about, a stray Meg floating along might mistake a human for a smaller fish. Chomp. But once it realizes you're not a fish, the Meg might back away and try to find something more nutritious. Fishing boats will need to steer clear of the Meg as well. The Meg 2.0 will be dominating the oceans and most popular fishing spots. And it wouldn't take kindly to any competition, even the humankind. These are the areas modern fishing boats would have to fear and avoid. And if they don't, they might end up getting attacked by a pod of angry Megs. This could also affect our ability to fish. Maybe sushi would eventually be off the menu in certain parts of the world. With a creature as dominant as the Megalodon, fishing may become a lot more rare for us humans. But that's if we choose not to fight back. Maybe we'll end up hunting down megalodons, if we're given the right technology. Or we'll just stay clear of the areas the Meg hunts in. If the Meg were around today, it would be at the top of the marine food chain. As apex predators, they'd keep populations of fish under control. But would the Meg be able to dominate forever? The only thing that threatens their future would be decreasing food in our oceans. With climate change and the oceans becoming more acidic, the marine life that the Meg depends on are dying out. But sea levels are rising. Warm waters are no longer confined to the tropics. The warmth is migrating northward and southward. As sea levels rise to engulf Bangladesh today, Venice tomorrow, will Meg 2.0 have to change its feeding strategy? In a weird and completely unexpected turn of events, will a species of Meg break off and become vegetarian, eating seagrasses to survive? Or will it ride the warm waters to attack coastal populations of humans? Or maybe humans will have to be worried about an entirely new creature that fought back against extinction. This is the Titanoboa, one of the largest and deadliest snakes to ever exist. It went extinct 55 million years ago, but what if that never happened? What if the Titanoboa just kept evolving and was alive today? What special traits would this deadly creature have? And how big could it get? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the Titanoboa never stopped evolving. Okay, before we look at the modern day Titanoboa, we need to go back. 60 million years ago, the Titanoboa lived in the tropical waters of South America, arriving on the scene after the dinosaurs went extinct. It was a major predator of its time. This snake was unimaginably large. It had a girth of about 1 meter. That means if it were slithering on the ground toward you, it would come up to your waist. It was 14 to 15 meters long, and it weighed over 1,000 kilograms. Luckily, the Titanoboa wasn't venomous, but don't let that trick you into believing it was safe. It had a different way of killing its victims, by squeezing the life out of them. Literally, by wrapping itself around your body or squeezing your windpipe, and then swallowing you whole. And if you tried to slip out, you'd be met with rows of sharp little teeth that would dig into you. But you could see this creature coming, right? No, not a chance. The Titanoboa was the perfect color, a color that allowed it to camouflage itself in its swampy environment. It would sit and wait for the perfect moment to strike. It feasted mainly on fish, turtles, and crocodiles. So, if the Titanoboa was so dominant, what finally made it go extinct? Well, it had to do with a massive change in climate. But to understand this, let's first dive into what made the Titanoboa such a dominant creature, and then how it suddenly went extinct. Paleocene, 66 million years ago to 56 million years ago. Titanoboas emerged after the apex predator niche was left empty by the extinction of the dinosaurs. They thrived in hot and humid environments. Lucky for them, that's what Earth happened to be like 60 million years ago. The average temperature was around 24-25 degrees Celsius. Now, we love that temperature in the summer, but imagine if it were that way the whole year. Instead of ice caps, the poles were covered with forests, and instead of polar bears, there were alligators roaming around. Just like today, a planet even a few degrees hotter is very unpleasant for human beings, so it's a good thing we weren't around at that time. But there's a set of animals that thrive in the heat, cold-blooded ones. Our Titanoboa was cold-blooded, so it loved warm weather. Unlike warm-blooded creatures, cold-blooded animals aren't able to regulate their own body temperature. They use heat from the environment to warm up their bodies and kick their metabolism into a higher gear. So a warmer Earth was perfect for the Titanoboa. It had a supply of external energy to keep its body warm, hunt without mercy, and become one of the largest predators ever. But then the Titanoboa went extinct. Why? Well, a lot of changes were happening at this time. The Earth experienced two very different climate shifts. First, it became very hot, and then it cooled down. With our current evidence, it's not clear if the Titanoboa became extinct during the heat spike or during the cooling phase. So let's look at each change and try and figure out what might have happened. The heat spike event, 56 million years ago. It was 56 million years ago that Earth suddenly got super hot. The official name for this heat spike is the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, or PETM for short. Massive amounts of carbon dioxide entered the atmosphere, raising the temperature by up to 8 degrees Celsius. The seas became really hot. In the tropics, it was like a warm bathtub with temperatures around 38 degrees Celsius. There was a mass extinction of creatures in the deep sea. In particular, many single-celled creatures called forams died out. Now, for the Titanoboa, this may have resulted in two different outcomes. It's possible that this giant snake thrived in hot water and became larger. Even if some fish were dying, other reptiles like turtles and crocodiles could have also grown big with the heat and became a great food source for the Titanoboa. So in this scenario, our Titanoboa just gets bigger and badder during the heat spike. But there's another possibility. Maybe the Titanoboa went extinct due to the warmer temperatures. Because the heat spike was so sudden, oceans absorbing carbon dioxide would have become more acidic. Many fish may have died in that acidic warm water, which would have meant fewer fish for the Titanoboa to eat. Now, if this were the case, the Titanoboa would have needed to adapt to survive. What evolutionary change could have helped it survive this heat spike? Well, if the tropical waters were too hot and acidic to live in, moving onto land would have been Titanoboa's best bet. Yeah, switching from a mostly pescatarian diet to being a meat eater. Now, as Earth became warmer, something interesting was happening. Above the waterline, the land was exploding with different types of mammals. Camels, horses, pigs, goats, and giraffes all evolved when Earth was a giant sauna. So, if Titanoboa moved from water to land, it would have found some new foods to keep it going. But because of its large size, living on land would have been difficult. So our Titanoboa would need a different kind of adaptation to get through this temperature spike. The giant snake is going to get some stronger swimming muscles and swim up to the poles, because now the poles have warmed up so much that they're tropical. The ice melted into water and the polar seas were full of crocodiles. The perfect lunch for a hungry Titanoboa. Eocene and Oleocene, 56 million years ago to 23 million years ago. Okay, after 200,000 years, the heat spike was finally over and temperatures went back to what they were before. But another major shift in climate is on the way, a cooling. Around 50 million years ago, temperatures began dropping in a long-term cooling trend that lasted until the dawn of civilization. The once lush forests at the poles are now becoming ice caps. This was bad news for the Titanoboa. The cooler climate didn't suit this cold-blooded snake. It could no longer get the heat it needed from the environment to be able to power itself. It's possible that this led to the Titanoboa's extinction about 55 million years ago. In order to survive, it would have had to evolve in a different and totally unexpected way. In our hypothetical scenario, the Titanoboa becomes warm-blooded. Maybe you're thinking, well, can a cold-blooded animal really become warm-blooded? Well, how is that even possible? Well, it's true that if we look at snakes, we don't see any examples of them being warm-blooded, but there is another category of cold-blooded creatures that have some warm-blooded exceptions. Fish. While the majority of fish are cold-blooded, about 0.1% are partially or fully warm-blooded. For instance, the moonfish is warm-blooded. Bluefin tuna, white sharks, and salmon sharks are kind of both. They use a special mechanism to raise their body temperature called vascular countercurrent heat exchange. Let me show you how it works. Let's use a shark as an example. Now, the muscles they use to swim generate heat, which heats blood in the veins. The arteries bring cold, oxygenated blood from the gills to the shark's muscles and organs. This cold blood picks up the heat from blood in the veins, which then raises the shark's internal temperature. But in the Titanoboa's case, there are no gills involved. It breathes in through its nostrils and has lungs to supply it with oxygen. But we can make it warm-blooded like the shark by having cold blood pumped in through the arteries, which then pick up the heat from the warm blood in the veins. This single evolutionary transformation would allow the Titanoboa to survive the mass cooling. Let's see what happens next. Miocene, 23 million years ago to 5 million years ago. During the Miocene epoch that followed, Earth began to warm a little, followed again by a period of cooling. The climate became drier and vegetation was more coarse. Rhinos were dominant in North America. Many species of horses evolved, as did a variety of camels. Also, a saber-toothed cat-like creature called the Nimravid roamed around. Could the Titanoboa have adapted in new and different ways to spawn a line of desert Titanoboas? Yeah, I know I said that living on land would be tough for such a massive creature, but maybe there's an evolutionary path to make this possible. To camouflage in the desert, it would need to adapt a new color scheme, a light sandy color. And its next most important adaptation? Strong muscles to burrow into desert soil and live underground during the day, both to conserve energy and to hunt under the cover of darkness. Now, to protect against water loss through the skin, the Titanoboa would take a lesson from the spadefoot toad. This toad secretes a semi-permeable membrane that makes its skin thick, locking in moisture. Our desert Titanoboa would branch out and have a new diet of birds and mammals. Many desert animals are too small to make a meal, so Titanoboa would lie in wait for a herd of camels, slither out of its burrow and make a killing. Or it might go months without food. So, the evolutionary path of Titanoboas could lead to two subspecies. The first one is shark-like, swimming far and wide across the ocean, able to preserve its body heat through adaptations that make it warm-blooded. And the second is also warm-blooded, but lives in burrows deep in the desert, like the sandworms from Dune. They emerge from the burrows with lightning speed, only to strike, eat, and then retreat back underground. These 21st century Titanoboas would be as long as 23 meters and about 1.2 meters wide. Imagine going for a swim in the ocean and running into one of those. You'd have just enough time for one last breath. 6,000 years ago to today. Now, this brings us to the question of how modern-day humans might interact with these magnificent and terrifying creatures. Before the start of modern hunting, Titanoboas would have been legendary, frightening sea creatures that terrified humans. Our ancestors would probably be scared of going in the ocean. Who knows? Any swim could be your last if you encountered a Titanoboa. The only good news would have been that these enormous creatures would probably have little interest in eating you. Because humans would provide little sustenance, they'd rather catch a large fish or crocodile. That would be much more satisfying. Now, as humans developed better weapons, the relationship would have changed. There's evidence of humans hunting whales as far back as 6000 BCE. If the Titanoboa was still around, it may have been a target of fishermen thousands of years ago. Maybe these snakes would become part of our diet. If their meat was tasty, who knows? Maybe humans would have hunted them to near extinction by now. In today's world, it'd be a lot like the occasional shark attack. We'd probably hear about rare Titanoboa attacks on humans who swam too far out into the ocean. In the desert, nomadic tribes would probably fear the random, unpredictable attacks of the desert Titanoboa. Camels would have evolved to be super sensitive to those giant snakes' underground movements. Maybe they'd warn humans when they sensed activity underground. With infrared technology, we'd be able to detect the heat signature of Titanoboas in their underground burrows. Future. But in today's fast-changing world, something new and interesting would be happening. Human activity has reversed the cooling trend. With global warming, temperatures are becoming attractive for reptiles again. Our newly evolved Titanoboas have a warm-blooded inner architecture that has helped them survive the cooling of prior epochs, but as the Earth heats again, the Titanoboa would, once again, lean on the environment for heat rather than using its muscular inner activity. Conditions would be ripe for the Titanoboa to hunt even more effectively and grow bigger. As sea levels rise in future years, our coastal cities will be flooded and destroyed. The warm weather will help new generations of Titanoboa thrive. But the traditional habitats of the Titanoboa are currently being destroyed. The lush tropical swamplands and forests near tropical waters are being wiped out by logging and commercial activity. The growing acidification of the waters will kill the marine life that the Titanoboa feeds on. This would prove to be the biggest challenge for the creature, the destruction of its food supply. But there is one prey left for the Titanoboa. It would have to eat several to make a meal of them, but there's lots around. You guessed it, I'm talking about us. Maybe we'd become the target of the new ferocious Titanoboa. Watch out the next time a coastal city floods.
This is the Megatherium, a giant sloth that roamed Earth just 12,000 years ago. This beast stood more than 3.5 meters tall. And today, we're gonna see what this creature was all about. Oof, that one hurt. But this is just one way you might die from a prehistoric animal. Creatures that lived thousands or millions of years ago were absolutely terrifying. From giant dinosaurs to the largest snakes ever discovered. If you were to come face to face with any of these creatures, there's a pretty good chance you'd end up dead. But how would that shake down? Okay, let's start by sending Digipeter 60 million years into the past. This is the Cretaceous period. During this period, part of the Mesozoic era, there's a good chance you could come face to face with a Titanoboa. A Titanoboa was nearly twice as big as any snake living today. They grew to more than 12.5 meters long and typically weighed over 1,000 kilograms. These giant snakes would lurk in swampy rainforests in what's now known as Colombia.
Titanoboa is such a big animal that, like big animals, it probably spent most of its time in the water. It would have been in aquatic environments for a good part of it, simply because it's so big, it's going to be hard to hide.
That's Dr. Michael Caldwell, one of the leading paleontologists here in Canada. Our correspondent Rose spoke with him and other prehistoric experts to figure out how I would die from these creatures. Thanks, Rose.
No problem, Peter. And speaking of which, what would happen if the Titanoboa attacked you?
Now, a snake this big needs a lot of food. And seeing a piece of prey the size of Digipeter, it would attack instantly. But how? Well, these snakes would swim through the water, using it for camouflage to get close enough to attack. They often hung out near lakes and rivers, waiting to strike. As it approaches Digipeter, the Titanoboa would open its mouth, sinking its curved teeth into him in order to grip and secure his body. A Titanoboa would then coil its body around you rapidly. The feeling would be like you were being crushed by the Eiffel Tower. Oh, poor Digipeter. This feels wrong. So, is there a possibility that we don't have to use a Digipeter? We could use somebody else in a 3D model? No, not a possibility? Okay. As the Titanoboa wraps around your body, it would eventually stop your blood from flowing. And we all know what that leads to.
Honestly, if it was coming after you, you probably wouldn't stand much of a chance. If it's got to be you versus the snake, my vote's going for the snake.
Sorry, Peter, this doesn't sound like it'd be very good for you. How is it that the Titanoboa can open its jaws so wide that it could swallow you whole?
Particularly the boa and python kind have really developed extremely elastic muscles and soft tissues in the throat region.
Snake's esophaguses blow up like a balloon and then deflate over time. So you can apply the same logic to the Titanoboa.
The body of the animal is so large that just weight alone, it pins you to the ground, and it's going to get a hold of your head with its mouth, and you're going to be crushed just under the weight of the animal. Whether it could or could not constrict you really wouldn't matter.
Great, thanks for making this even worse for me. Now, as you're passing through the Titanoboa's body, you're slowly being dissolved by the snake's stomach acids. This would be a long, slow, and painful process. Remember, it's a 12.5-meter snake. Well, it wouldn't really be painful since you're already dead. And by the time the Titanoboa has finished digesting you, virtually nothing would be left. That's right, the Titanoboa's stomach acids are so strong that even your bones would be dissolved. The only parts of you remaining would be your nails and some of your hair.
So even though the Titanoboa's belly might be full, it might not be for the best.
If you choose to eat a big goat, you're sitting there for 3 or 4 days before you can move. That has serious biological repercussions because anything walking by and you're just like a snack with another snack inside of you.
So Peter, even though now you're eaten by a Titanoboa, you can at least be happy that the predator has now become the prey.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, let's rank these deaths on our pain scale. I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10 because we have some even more terrible scenarios coming up. Okay, now that's how you die 60 million years ago. Now let's go back a little further, 66 million years into the past. This is the age of dinosaurs. Lurking around every corner is something that wants to kill you. Let's see how Digipeter fares. Why is the ground shaking? Oh no, oh gosh, it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I better start moving. Run, little guy, run! This nearly 7,000 kilogram beast was the ruler of the dinosaur kingdom. Hunting in complete solitude, it's approaching Digipeter at nearly 60 kilometers per hour. Yeah, I don't think I stand a chance here. Maybe I can survive by hiding behind a tree or staying very still. After all, the T-Rex was only good at detecting prey when it's moving. It had eyes the size of oranges, which are bigger than any mammal we have living today. There's no chance my digital legs are getting away from this. All of a sudden, the T-Rex bites with its banana-sized teeth. It had a bite force of nearly 13,000 psi. That would feel like you were being crushed by a building. Then it would tear the flesh off your bones until they were stripped clean. That doesn't look too fun. But what do we really know about the T-Rex? I mean, other than what we watched in the movies. What do the experts have to say?
I went to the Canadian Museum of Nature to talk with Dr. Jordan Mallon to find out. I saw online that Tyrannosaurs are really fast runners. They can run up to 45 kilometers an hour. Is that true?
I think the consensus nowadays is T-Rex probably wasn't as fast as you suggested, probably more like half that. It would have needed more muscle dedicated to its legs than it possibly could have fit on those legs. Because of course, the bigger you are and the faster you want to move, the more muscle you need. And at some point, the amount of muscle required to move a certain speed is just impossible.
Not only that, but if the T-Rex were to move at speeds over 40 kilometers an hour, that would increase its chances of falling over, which, according to Dr. Mallon,
if you've got an animal moving that fast and it falls at those speeds, forget about it. Like, that's a dead animal.
Okay, maybe its speed is over-exaggerated in movies, but you know what isn't? Their size. The T-Rex is ridiculously massive. It wasn't until I got to see a cast of its skull where it really started to click.
You know, T-Rex could eat you in one bite effectively. You know, the skull's 4 or 5 feet long.
And its teeth were even more terrifying.
What's really cool about T-Rex is that its teeth are unlike those of many other meat-eating dinosaurs. They're almost like banana-shaped. And this would have allowed T-Rex to not just cut through meat, but crush bone.
This kind of feels like a dagger slash really, really heavy knife with tiny serrations on both sides. I feel like this could kill somebody, honestly. It gets even worse. There's some evidence that suggests T-Rexes might have traveled and hunted in packs. So Peter, it looks like there's some good and bad. On one hand, the T-Rex is ridiculously massive, deadly, and you might have to deal with a couple at a time. But on the other, it's not as fast as we thought, so you might have a chance to outrun it. Good luck.
Okay, let's try this again. So, if you were transported 66 million years into the past and a T-Rex was coming for you, it might look something like this. Instead of just one T-Rex, Digipeter is dealing with 3, 4. He can try standing still in hopes that the T-Rexes don't see him, but wait, that doesn't look like it's gonna work. T-Rexes actually had amazing eyesight, and they didn't rely on movement to see their prey. They had better eyes than a modern-day hawk, so seeing prey was incredibly easy.
One of the really distinctive features about T-Rex in particular is that its eyes face forward like yours and mine. It had binocular vision. It had an overlapping field of view. So the eyes would have been located one here and in the same socket on the other side here. That's a big eye. It would have taken in a lot of light, so they almost certainly had good vision.
So Digipeter has no choice but to run away and hope for the best. And this time, running might be his best option. Oh no, never mind. Remember, T-Rexes were also ambush predators, so you likely wouldn't even have the chance to run away from them.
Jurassic Park, the T-Rex in that movie was always roaring and announcing its presence. You knew it was getting close before it was there because it was causing the ground to shake. And very likely T-Rex was not quite so loud.
Instead, they'd sneak up on you, chomp down, and kill you. Then the whole group of T-Rexes would devour your body, bones and all.
So if the T-Rex ate everything and it was a bone crusher, did it actually eat the bones of the animals that it ate?
Yes, and I've got something to show you here. This is actually a T-Rex turd. There was some science done on this. It was put inside of a CT scanner, and it contains many fragments of dinosaur bone.
Ooh, this one is nasty. This is an 8 on the pain scale. But the T-Rex wasn't the only deadly creature that would be out to get you. Another deadly dino and Jurassic Park star during this time? The raptor. If they're anything like what we see in the movies, these guys are terrifying and extremely dangerous. Early research depicted these creatures standing at about 2 meters tall, that's 6 feet. They would easily use their size and strength to overpower Digipeter. The main thing you'd need to watch out for? Their sharp, sickle-shaped claws. These claws could inflict fatal wounds or disembowel you almost instantly. And good luck outrunning them. A raptor could run at speeds of over 40 kilometers per hour.
This sounds pretty bad for you, but I wonder if we can get a second opinion.
So the velociraptors in Jurassic Park were nowhere as big as they were depicted. Velociraptors in life were more turkey-sized. They're quite a bit smaller.
Good news, but you still gotta worry about those claws.
Historically, the thinking was that killer claw there, the idea was that really it slashed open the belly of its prey.
But current research suggests that these so-called killer claws may have been quite different.
The problem is that when you actually look at the cross-section of the claw, it's not especially sharp or pointed, it's quite rounded. And so now the thinking is that maybe that claw was used to, like as a crampon, maybe to climb up on top of its prey, or maybe it was used to hold down the prey while the jaws did the dirty work.
In order to get our answer, I wanted to know just one simple thing. If a human was to hunt a raptor, who would win?
One-on-one?
Yep.
I think humans are pretty smart. I'll go advantage human.
Okay, but what does that mean for Digipeter? How many could he take on?
So I'll give you 5. 5, yeah.
How many raptors do you think I could take on?
11.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
All right, I like my odds. So, based off what we now know about raptors, maybe an attack would look more like this. Let's start by making the raptor way smaller and adding some feathers, another thing Dr. Mallon told us. Now it kind of looks more like a modern-day bird. And just like we're not afraid of most birds, you probably don't need to be incredibly scared of raptors. Sure, they might attack and hurt you. Again, they have the claws and the sharp teeth, but in terms of them killing our Digipeter, they don't really stand a chance. The only other thing Digipeter would have to worry about is if these raptors traveled in packs.
A lot of people think that raptors moved about in packs, that they were pack hunters. Again, that's thanks to the movies. But we actually don't have great evidence for pack hunting in any of these animals.
Phew, okay. Then I'm gonna chalk this up as a win for me, or for Digipeter. It looks like there's a good chance he'd survive an encounter with a raptor. So this is more like a 5 out of 10 on the pain meter. Okay, let's get back to our giant sloth. Would dying at the slow hands of this creature really be that bad? Well, again, our correspondent Rose may have the answer.
You might think of a giant sloth as, well, sloth-like, moving slowly and methodically. I'm talking 1/4 of a kilometer an hour, but they're actually a lot faster than that. I talked to Marisa Gilbert to find out more.
They probably moved around 3 to 5 kilometers an hour, and they probably were able to do short bursts of 8 kilometers an hour, but they were not very fast animals.
But we wouldn't have to worry about it killing us, right? These giant sloths were strictly herbivores.
We can say that yes, they were eating plant material. We know they were eating stems, foliage, leaves, that sort of thing, fruits.
But this time, instead of this giant sloth attacking us humans, it may have been the other way around. Megatherium may have gone extinct due to humans and climate change.
Sites have found tool marks on Megatherium and other ground sloth bones. And so it's safe to say that yes, it was a great resource for our ancestors. They were hunting and utilizing ground sloths for sure.
Finally, now it's time for some revenge. Instead of Digipeter constantly getting his butt kicked by prehistoric creatures, he's gonna fight back and win. The Megatherium was a type of giant sloth that originated in South America. Around 35 million years ago, when humans hunted these beasts, we did so with a variety of different tactics. Instead of using brute force and chasing these animals down, we used a more stealthy approach. And that's what Digipeter is going to do. Let's equip him with a stone spear and see what happens. As he approaches the local watering hole, he sees a giant sloth, ready for the taking. This could mean food for him and his tribe for the next 3 months. But remember, it's a giant sloth. These creatures were massive. They needed multiple humans to take them down. So, let's duplicate Digipeter and give him a fighting chance. Ah, that's better. Okay, now this should be a walk in the park. Our Digipeters go and ambush the Megatherium, poking and prodding with their spears, but as they continue their fight, it's not looking good. What happened here? Well, even though we had all the advantages we could think of, hunting a giant sloth was still no easy task back in the day. Even though they were mainly herbivores, they were pacifists. They'd still fight back when pushed into a corner. Their claws were more than 30 centimeters long. That's 1 foot. They mainly used them for digging roots, but now they're being used for clawing humans. If you got swiped with one of these, you'd be left to bleed out. A slow, painful death. You might be able to recover, but without modern medicine, the chances are pretty slim. This is an 8 out of 10 for me. Okay, next, we're going over 300 million years into the past to experience the Carboniferous period. This era had one particularly terrifying trait: giant insects.
Now, this was because of really high oxygen levels in the atmosphere at the time. The insects drank it up. The extra oxygen allowed them to grow bigger than we've ever seen. One of the most notable bugs, the Arthropleura. This giant centipede-like creature was over 2 meters long. Once it sees you, it'll rush on over and start biting you with its giant fangs. An insect this large is surely going to want to attack you. Maybe it wants your blood. Or at least that's what you think would happen with an insect so large. Actually, research suggests that the Arthropleura was a super slow-moving insect. It hung out in forests and dined on dead plant material all day. It wouldn't be interested in you or any other creature. I'm giving this one a 0 on the pain scale. Okay, so we might not have to worry about a giant insect coming after us, but one creature we will have to worry about? The saber-toothed tiger. Let's fast forward from the Carboniferous to just 56 million years ago, a time when these beasts were one of the apex predators. These giant cats weighed over 200 kilograms and could run up to 40 kilometers per hour, but only for short bursts. And due to this lack of running, saber-toothed tigers were ambush predators. They'd hide in the bushes and the tall grass, waiting to strike. And when they did, they'd pounce on you with their giant claws and teeth. Their canine teeth could be up to 20 centimeters long. But once they got hold of you, there'd be no going back. The saber-tooth would be on top of you, clawing and biting. It would likely go for your neck first to incapacitate you, kill you. Then it would feast on the rest of you. But unlike most predators during these times, this ferocious tiger wouldn't consume everything. It'd feast on your muscles and your flesh, but leave your bones. This is because it didn't want to damage its valuable canine teeth. Remember, we're about 56 million years away from veterinary dentists. Without the canine teeth that this beast was named for, it wouldn't be all that scary.
And you probably wouldn't have to worry about these saber-toothed tigers attacking you in the first place.
So we don't have any evidence of any tool marks on Smilodon, and we don't have any evidence of Smilodon attacking or having used humans as prey. We do know that they overlapped in time and space for quite some time. And I could say with certainty that there were encounters. They did see each other. They lived in the same place. They utilized the same prey. Were they prey? Were they preyed upon? I can't answer that.
So luckily for you, Peter, even if you were in this time period and saw this big cat, you probably wouldn't end up in a fight with one. But let's say you somehow did and wanted to survive. What are you doing next?
Humans would craft spears and strategize on how they'd attack a saber-toothed tiger. They'd also make sure that they set up camps in places that would give them a lot of advance notice if a saber-tooth was about to attack. These first encounters with saber-toothed tigers would be terrifying. Similar to the sloth, a single attack from this beast would mean the end for you. Yeah, I'm giving this one a 9 on the pain meter. But the good news is, it wouldn't always be like this.
After all, these saber-toothed tigers went extinct 10,000 years ago. And it wasn't from humans. There is no evidence that shows we had any significant encounters.
There was climate change happening at the time, and so they were part of that larger megafauna that went extinct at the end of the last ice age.
Okay, next up, the terror croc. About 80 million years ago, this beast reigned supreme. It was over 10 meters long and had a stronger bite force than the T-Rex. Similar to a lot of other animals on our list, terror crocs would ambush you. You'd likely be unaware of their presence due to their ability to camouflage themselves near the water. If you got too close, a terror croc would quickly lunge at you with its powerful open jaws and then bite down. And if its bite didn't kill you, it would perform the death roll. This is when a terror croc drags you underwater and spins you rapidly. This kind of punishment would almost certainly kill you. At that point, the terror croc would use its massive teeth to chew you into chunks, splitting your body into multiple pieces. And then the terror croc would consume every last chunk of you. Now, similar to modern-day crocodiles, the terror croc had a highly acidic stomach acid that was capable of dissolving your bones. Ugh, I think I'll pass. Now, given that these creatures basically roam around today, I'm giving this a 10. More on the fear scale, but also on the pain meter. Regardless of whatever creature we think we might be able to take on in a fight, I think coming across any of these scenarios would be terrifying. Let's just say I'm pretty happy that humans are at the top of the food chain in our modern world.
66 million years ago, an asteroid as big as Mount Everest was headed on a deadly collision course with Earth. The impact was so devastating that it wiped out the most gigantic, deadliest reptiles to ever roam our planet. But the dinosaurs didn't just die from one big boom. No, they faced a slow, agonizing end. How did this extinction event cause the largest tsunami Earth has ever seen? And what exactly happened after the big reptiles were gone? Hold on tight, we're taking you on the most epic and deadly trip of your life. This dinosaur-ending asteroid is terrifying. Not only was it about 10 kilometers in diameter, but it also traveled incredibly fast, between 10 and 30 kilometers per second. At this point, it was a blazing fireball. As it hurtled down to Earth, the air in front of it was compressing and heating up to unimaginably hot temperatures. Just before the impact, the asteroid could have been as hot as the surface of the sun. Once it entered our atmosphere, it only took this massive space rock a few seconds to reach Earth's surface and alter the course of life forever. As the asteroid slammed into Earth off the coast of where Mexico is now, it sent huge amounts of debris up into the air. The shocking blast wave killed everything in its way. And from here, it was only getting worse. This powerful blast ejected bits of the Earth's surface into the atmosphere. And minutes later, scorching hot pieces of glass and rock rained back down. Some of the debris reacted with the atmosphere, causing acid rain that would last for years. The land was burning. The fires caused by this devastating impact spread across the continent like literal wildfire, killing more and more life along the way. And then, just when you thought the apocalyptic scenario couldn't get any more intense, well, it did. The impact of the asteroid hitting Earth was so powerful that it sent shockwaves through the planet. And all that energy had to go somewhere. Cue the mega tsunami. A wall of water over 10 meters high raced across the ocean. This wasn't your regular tsunami. It was a staggering 30,000 times more powerful than anything you see today. As this monstrous wave spread across the North Atlantic and South Pacific, coastlines didn't stand a chance. The wave hit with such force that it destroyed and reshaped the continent. If you were there to witness this apocalyptic destruction, well, you wouldn't survive any of it. But some dinosaurs did. Yeah, the ones further away from ground zero weren't immediately obliterated by the impact. They weren't incinerated by the resulting infernos, and they managed to avoid being swept away by the mega tsunami. But still, their fate was sealed. As the dust began to settle, it was the start of a nuclear winter. Even though it wasn't nuclear weapons that caused it, the effect was the same. The massive amount of debris in the air blocked the sunlight for months, maybe even years. Earth suddenly became a cold, dark place, and the dinos weren't ready for it. As temperatures plummeted and fires released enormous amounts of greenhouse gases, the climate changed dramatically. Plants weren't able to perform photosynthesis, and most of them started to die out. This disrupted the food chain and starved many of the animals that survived the impact. And remember the acid rain? It lasted for several years, causing more devastation to the ecosystems. The oceans became too acidic for marine life. Most ocean species didn't have the time to adapt to such a drastic change. These prolonged harsh conditions, together with the initial blast, pushed about 75% of Earth's life to extinction. The good news is that this included the horrifying T-Rex. Yeah, as much as I feel bad for this guy, I'm happy he's not running around today. When the last of the dinosaurs breathed their last breath, Earth became an empty, devastated place, cold and acidic. So when did things get back to normal? Yeah, well, here's the thing. They didn't. Not dinosaur-era normal, anyway. Earth didn't rebuild after that. It reinvented itself. 1,000 years later, the planet was recovering from the post-apocalyptic winter. It was still cold and food was still scarce, but life was ready to make a comeback. In this new wild world, a few furry little critters were sprinting around. Among the first plants to reappear after the impact were ferns. They really hit it off well after the disaster. 100,000 years later, Earth began to get a little more lively. Creatures about the size of raccoons were repopulating the continents. And the oceans were once again teeming with life. Fast forward about 10 million years, and Earth had finally restored its biodiversity. Only it wasn't the same Earth as it used to be. Now it was the age of mammals. Yeah, after the dinosaurs checked out, mammals were on fire. Yeah, not literally, of course. Mammals, together with birds and flowering plants, were rocking the planet. Yeah, Earth never got back to its old self. After the last dinosaur died, it took our planet millions of years to bounce back in a new way. But don't get me wrong, this world was still pretty terrifying. It had beasts like Paraceratherium roaming the land and Megalodons raining terror in the oceans. Yeah, it's really for the best that most of these creatures aren't around these days. If you traveled 250 million years into the past, you'd be witnessing the dawn of dinosaurs. One of the leading theories is that dinosaurs evolved from a species known as archosaurs. These were the dominant reptiles that appeared during the late Permian period. To some, they may even look like dinosaurs, and that's because they were ancestors to these incredible creatures. Over time, the archosaurs split up into two groups. One of these groups led to crocodiles, and the other led to dinosaurs, which continued evolving into thousands of different species. One of the main traits they eventually gained was their bipedal abilities. Early dinosaurs began to walk on two legs, freeing their front limbs for other uses like grabbing food and defending themselves. And that's just the start of their evolutionary journey. Let's travel back in time, 250 million years ago, and witness the history of dinosaurs in 10 minutes. Triassic period. As you enter this new era, you'll notice that the dinosaurs running around look pretty different from what you're used to seeing. One of the earliest dinosaurs that emerged from the archosaurs was the Eoraptor. This little guy was about the size of a dog, barely 1 meter tall and weighing in at a meager 10 kilograms. You know, we typically think of dinosaurs as these massive creatures, but it'd be a couple million more years before that started to happen. We'll check in to see how those dinos are growing in size as we travel through time. But for now, let's see what's happening to Earth. During the Triassic period, the supercontinent Pangaea starts to fragment, slowly altering global climates and ecosystems. The climate was generally hot and dry, and there were no polar ice caps, creating a stark contrast to what you're typically used to in modern-day Earth. The vegetation was also very different and was crucial for the survival and evolution of dinosaurs. The plants have different characteristics as well. Some are tough, some nutritious, and others potentially poisonous. Each one of them will influence the dietary and adaptive strategies of different dinosaur species. Speaking of which, what are some other dinosaurs doing during this time? Weighing in at about 23 kilograms and 1 meter tall, we have the Coelophysis. It was a little bit bigger than the Eoraptor, but that didn't stop it from being a fast and agile predator that likely preyed on smaller animals. Now, the Herrerasaurus was slightly taller at about 1.1 meters, but was a lot heavier at about 350 kilograms. Then we have the Plateosaurus. Now, this guy is way bigger than me. It stood tall at about 3 meters and weighed up to 4,000 kilograms. This was one of the earliest examples of how big dinosaurs could grow. But wait, they get even bigger than this. Despite their impressive forms, dinosaurs weren't the dominant creatures during the Triassic. They had to share their environments with many other organisms, all vying for survival in the diverse ecosystems. This was the case until the Triassic period would experience a great extinction event. This was likely caused by massive volcanic activity, climate change, and potentially even some small asteroid impacts. This will have a significant effect on life on Earth and lead to the extinction of numerous species. But it wasn't all bad, especially for our dinosaurs. This moment set the stage to bring new opportunities to these species, leading to them dominating the Earth. Jurassic period. Now, instead of dinosaurs simply surviving, this is where they thrive. Over the millions of years, different species have been evolving, and dinosaurs are now the rulers of the Earth. They spread across continents, dominating the lush forests and arid deserts. Occupying these areas were some massive dinosaurs, ones that you're probably a lot more familiar with. We have the Stegosaurus, Brachiosaurus, and Allosaurus. These were some of the largest creatures ever to walk the Earth. But you'd quickly notice that it wasn't just these massive beasts that were roaming around. This era also saw the evolution of theropods. These were smaller dinosaurs that had more of a bird-like form. One of the most famous was the Archaeopteryx. It was kind of like a mix between a dinosaur and a bird, with feathers and wings, but also with bony teeth and a tail. The Archaeopteryx was a crucial link between birds and dinosaurs. If you wait about 100 million more years, they'll evolve into the birds we know today. Oh, wait, is that a spoiler? After 56 million years, the Jurassic period comes to an end. This was after yet another extinction event happened. Luckily, this one is more minor. However, due to climate change, volcanic activity, and sea levels changing, some species are going extinct. This, once again, changes the landscape as the dinosaurs enter their final era. Cretaceous period. Okay, we've now entered the Cretaceous period, and as we've been traveling through these millions of years, you may have noticed something's missing. Right, one of the dinosaurs' biggest stars hasn't appeared yet. Say hello to the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The T-Rex was a massive beast. It was 3.7 meters tall and 12 meters long. Not only that, but it was a whopping 9 tons. Equipped with a powerful jaw and incredibly sharp teeth, the T-Rex dominated the Cretaceous kingdom. It was one of the most dominant predators history has ever seen. This colossal beast wasn't just scavenging leftovers, it was an active hunter, stalking its prey with keen eyesight and a heightened sense of smell. Among its favorite meals were the sizable herbivores like the Edmontosaurus. But the T-Rex didn't stop there. It would take on formidable opponents like the Triceratops and even other smaller theropods if the opportunity arose. With its powerful jaws filled with 12-inch teeth and its strong hind limbs that allowed it to run at speeds of up to 40 kilometers per hour, the T-Rex was a master of the hunt. But this period wasn't just filled with massive beasts like the T-Rex. Look around and you'll also notice even more feathered dinosaurs in the Cretaceous period.
One of them being the Velociraptor. Now, you typically see them portrayed like this with no feathers, but evidence suggests that these creatures were quite feathered. Now, the feathers weren't necessarily used for flying, more for warmth and stability. And this one is the Microraptor. Now, unlike the Velociraptor, its feathers likely were used for flight, giving us crucial insight into the evolution of birds.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, Pangaea was breaking up and forming into the continents we know today. But because of this, some dinosaurs were forced to migrate and separate into different areas of the world. These dinosaurs had to adapt to their new environments, potentially changing the course of their evolution. But none of this matters when we consider what happens next. The cataclysmic event. Okay, as you've been hanging out with the dinosaurs for millions of years, an asteroid has been making its way toward Earth. Then suddenly, it hits, creating a massive crater 150 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers deep. Naturally, something this huge makes a devastating impact on the world, one that'll change it forever. The asteroid's collision is massive, but its impact is felt long after the initial crash. Due to the massive collision, the environment drastically changes. Significant drops in temperature start to occur, and debris from the crash begins to block out the sun. This impacts not only the dinosaurs' health, but also their food supply. This devastating event wipes out 75% of the Earth's species, many of which are the dinosaurs we've been observing this whole time. But don't worry, not all of the dinosaurs went extinct. The aviation-based dinosaurs we checked out earlier managed to survive the asteroid strike, eventually evolving into birds. Aftermath. Now that most of the dinosaurs are extinct, it's cleared the way for mammals to diversify and expand their impact on the world. With less competition, early mammals can now thrive and take over, which slowly, over time, allowed humans to evolve, building the world we know today. Dinosaurs went on to evolve for another 165 million years, but there's still so much we need to learn about them. Like, did you know that not all dinosaurs were cold-blooded? Some of them may have been warm-blooded, or even both. But that's a story for another What If. In the past few billion years, Earth has been pummeled by asteroids, crashed into other planets, and frozen over several times.